Hi, this is Amanda, and on this episode of Eat Kind with Me, we're going to make traditional pozole with jackfruit. So pozole is a traditional Mexican soup or stew normally made with hominy and meat, which is usually pork, but it can be made with chicken and goat as well. Since we're making this vegan, we're obviously not going to be using pork or the other meat options I gave you. We're going to be using jackfruit. I thought jackfruit would be perfect for this recipe because when cooked thoroughly and pulled apart, it looks really similar to pork, and I also feel like it absorbs flavors very well, which I think is perfect for pozole. So if you've never purchased jackfruit for yourself, I normally find it at my local Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Sprouts, or you can even order it on Amazon. So with all that being said, let's just hop right into the recipe. So there are actually 3 different kinds of pozole that you can make. There's a red pozole, white pozole, and green pozole. I grew up eating the red one. The only difference really between these are the sauce that you put inside of it. So the red pozole would have red sauce, which would require all of these chilies. So for the sauce that I'm making today, I'm going to be using guajillo chilies. This is gonna be our like sweet, spicy flavor in the sauce. They're not very spicy at all. The second one is going to be ancho. I love these. They give you a very smoky flavor. They also have a little bit of a sweet, spicy taste to them. And then the last ones we're going to be using are called chile de arbol. This one is very spicy. This is what a lot of people normally use to add spice to their sauce. Fun fact, my mom actually does not use this in her pozole, but I love a little bit of spice, so I'm using this today. First, what we need to do is wash these chilies because they have sometimes a little dirt and debris on them. So what I like to do is remove these tops, and I'm going to rinse them under running water to rinse them very well inside and to remove those seeds. The only exception would be these small ones like the chile de arbol. These ones you can just wash the outside and they're good to go. And then once you're finished washing them, I just like to add them directly to the pot. So now we're going to boil our chilies for about 5 minutes so they get some moisture back in them, and then we're going to steam them for 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and add in 2 cups right now, and then we are going to cover and let boil for 5 minutes. While this is going, I'm going to go ahead and prep the onion and garlic. So we're going to be adding in 1/8 of an onion and then 2 garlic cloves. So now that it's been 5 minutes, I'm going to turn this off. And then now I'm just gonna let them steam for 5 minutes, and then they'll be ready to blend. Okay, so I think the chilies are now ready. So all you need to do is just put these in the blender. And then like I said earlier, we are also going to be using some of this water too. This just adds such a great flavor compared to just adding regular water. And then our 1/8 onion, 2 cloves of garlic. We're also going to be using Mexican oregano. I honestly don't know if this is different from regular oregano. I just bought this at my local Mexican market. I'm sure you can find this at your local Ralph's. They usually have this like small Mexican aisle with chilies and spices. It gives a great flavor to red sauces. To this, I'm going to be adding 1/2 teaspoon. And then our secret ingredient, you guys, I've made this with just salt, and I swear using bouillon gives the sauce such a complexity that it's just so comparable to the pozole that my mom made when I was a kid. If you've never heard of bouillon, I've always thought it was not vegan because it's usually chicken-based or beef-based, but I found this vegan vegetable-based one from Sprouts, and when you open it, it has this very thick, dark texture. It looks similar to molasses or like a very thick chocolate spread. But if you smell it, it smells like those like little packets you would get from like your Top Ramen. Very salty, a lot of umami stuff going on. So I'm going to be adding 3 teaspoons of this to our sauce, which may seem like a lot, but it doesn't really matter if our sauce is kind of salty because this is what's gonna give our pozole most of its salt. All right, now that we have that all in, let's go ahead and blend. And at this point, I like to give it a little taste, see if it needs a little more salt. Oh, ooh, wow, okay. spicy, smoky, a little tangy. Wow, that's delicious. So for this recipe, we are going to be using 20 ounces of green canned jackfruit. I have seen smaller cans of this before that are usually around 7 or 8 ounces. So you can use 2 of those and that's perfectly fine as well. But I just picked this one up at Trader Joe's. So this is what our jackfruit looks like if you've never seen it before. They usually come in these triangle cut pieces, and you'll see that this top portion looks very shredded like pork would be. But what we're going to do is cut off this bottom portion right here that is a little bit harder and it won't cook very well down. So I'm going to be cutting off these pieces. What I'm going to be doing as well is some of these will have their seeds left over. So for instance, this one has a little hole. So I'm just gonna go in and remove these because these don't cook down very well either. I will say I highly recommend, if you have a nearby Trader Joe's, to get your jackfruit from there. I've tried other brands and this one is by far the best to work with. So while I'm rinsing it, I just like to kind of help it pull it apart a bit more, just so the water is going in between everything. And if you smell it, you can definitely still smell that brine on it. So all you need to do is add this jackfruit to the pot, and we are going to boil it for 5 minutes. Doing this removes a lot more of that brine. So then after boiling it, we're just gonna rinse it again and then it'll be good to use. Some people do repeat this process twice, but I find doing it once is good enough. Okay, so now that it's boiling, I like to lower the heat just a little bit because we don't need to do a heavy boil. A simmer is just fine. And I also just started my timer. So we're gonna let this go for 5 minutes and that should be just enough time to take out that brine. All right, it has been 5 minutes. So I'm gonna turn off the heat and I'm just gonna transfer this to the same strainer we used earlier. And then rinse it with cold water. We are gonna be squeezing this water out, but unless you wanna burn your hands, highly recommend rinsing it with cold water first. So now I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze a lot of this water out, and then we're just gonna plop this on here. And then I like to do this over the sink because there will be a lot of water coming out. So this will be very quick. We're only gonna cook this for about 5 to 8 minutes, just until the jackfruit starts to brown, and then we're gonna add in our prepared sauce. So you could use any oil you have on hand. I'm just gonna use some plain old olive oil. So once it starts getting very warm, that's when we can add in our jackfruit. So I'm just gonna help break this apart a little bit. Some of it is staying together. Okay, this jackfruit looks about done. Once you start seeing it crisping up on some sides, that's when you know you could start adding the sauce. Just be careful, sometimes the pan can be very hot and then the sauce will jump at you, so keep your distance. Woo! Just stir it very quickly. So I'm just gonna let this cook together for about 2 minutes till the jackfruit really absorbs that sauce. It's so awesome too. If you guys look up close to this, it looks like pulled pork with red sauce, like literally what you would use to fill tamales or something. This looks so good. So after about 2 minutes, you can go ahead and turn off the heat, and then we have our jackfruit sauce. This is what we're gonna add to the hominy later. So we're gonna set this aside and then we could start working on the pozole base. So for this recipe, we're going to be using 30 ounces or about 3 cups of Mexican style hominy. The best thing about this recipe is that it can be easily doubled or tripled. So if you wanna make this for the whole family, the whole neighborhood lot, it's very easy to make in bulk. So next thing we're gonna do is dump this in the strainer and we're going to rinse it out with some water. If you've never seen hominy before, it basically looks like giant pieces of corn kernels, or what's that called? Corn nuts. Have you ever ate that before? Yeah, they're just basically that. Sometimes I think I've seen these larger, but any size will work. To this, we're also going to be adding 8 cups of water, which seems like a lot, but this is basically a soup, so it requires a lot of liquid. And then while this is boiling, we are also going to be adding in half a teaspoon of Mexican oregano. We are going to be using 1/8 of an onion and 3 cloves of garlic. To keep our garlic and onion out of the soup itself, I purchased these soup socks, and it's basically a fine mesh bag to hold in some ingredients that you want the flavor of in your broth, but not the actual ingredient in the broth, if that makes sense. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. Another hack that my mom actually taught me is if you don't have these on hand, you could actually use the bag that the garlic cloves come in. She cuts it in half and then she just ties it at the end, and this is your own soup stock at home. So here we're gonna add in our onion and 3 garlic cloves. And this is a pretty big bag, but I'm just going to knot it. So we're gonna start to boil this, and to help it go faster, I'm just gonna cover it for now. Okay, so it looks like our pozole is now boiling. So what I'm gonna do is open this lid slightly, and I'm also gonna lower the heat to medium. And again, we're gonna let this boil for 30 minutes. All right, so it has been 30 minutes. And if you guys notice, the water or our broth, the color has changed. And that just means it has absorbed a lot of the flavors like the oregano, the garlic, and the onion. So now I'm going to pour in the sauce that we made earlier with the jackfruit. There we go. This is gonna give our pozole a beautiful color and flavor. So at this point too, I like to give it a little taste just so we know how much salt to add. So beautifully spiced. Since we added a lot of water, it does need more seasoning to it. So I'm going to be adding in a tablespoon of this vegetable bouillon. This may seem like a lot, but it is a lot of broth. Trust me on this one. And I also like to add in a teaspoon of sea salt. So now we're just going to let this simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then she'll be ready to serve. So for our toppings, some traditional ones would be cabbage, radishes, and limes. Some people do add lettuce to their pozole, but my family prefers cabbage because it gives it a nicer crunch, especially when it's sitting in the pozole. It doesn't get too soggy. So my mom actually taught me how to chop this. I didn't know there was a specific way to do this, but well, first of all, when you have the full head of cabbage, you're gonna cut it in half. Now that I have this half portion, we're gonna cut it in half again. So then you're left with this quartered piece right here. So now I'm just going to peel this back portion off, and then you're going to grab the cabbage from this point, from the end right here, turn it upside down, and then from here you're going to go against the side and thinly slice it halfway down. So do it as thin as you possibly can, and then you could rotate it to the other side too. And then with the radishes, this is pretty easy. All we're gonna do is chop off this top and then the end. And then we're just gonna slice this into thin coins. And then for the limes, we're going to cut them vertically from one end to the other. And then you're just gonna repeat the process to each half, so you're left with 4 wedges. My family also loves topping this with some coarse sea salt, so I'm just gonna pour some right here on this side. There we go. And here are our toppings. Pretty easy, and it'll add such a great crunch and freshness to our pozole. Okay, so it's been 20 minutes, which means the pozole is ready and it's time to plate. So now I'm going to remove this mesh bag or our soup stock, and then we could start serving ourselves up. The jackfruit really cooked down and it looks so much like pulled pork. It's crazy. And again, for the toppings, we're gonna add some of our shredded cabbage. You could also add some diced onion right on top. And then we're gonna add our radishes as well. A little sprinkle of that salt right on top. And then our wedge of lime. And then here we have it, you guys, vegan pozole, which is so crazy. I can't believe we made it, but we did. All right, so all that there's left to do is to taste the pozole. So let's go ahead and dive in. So First, I like to give it a good little squirt of lime, a little bit of the cabbage, the radish. Wow, this tastes insanely traditional. It's crazy. It tastes like the exact same thing my mom made when I was a kid. I literally cannot wait to make this for her because I swear she is going to be proud of me. I will say, this is a little bit of an intensive recipe. There are a few steps in it, but I swear going through the whole process is so worth it once you have this at the end. This is Amanda for Live Kindly. Do you like cooking with jackfruit? What have you made? Let me know in the comments below. Also, remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I'll see you again next time.